G'day everyone and welcome back to a new episode of I Tried, the series where I try new things as they relate to cosplay, sewing, costuming or something like that. This time I tried to write a novel. But Curly, you have a cosplay channel, why are you writing a novel? Well, very simply put, cosplayers are very creative people, and I would say that most of us are readers, and I would say that of those people, a good portion of us either want to write a novel or have written a novel. So I gave it a go. But very quickly, I need to point out that this is probably part 1 and there's probably going to be a part 2, but I'm getting ahead of myself. I'll explain that at the end. Let's crack into it. So let's start off with a bit about the story that I've written, starting with the title. It's called Haberdashery and Gold. The story is set in 1903 in the town of Kalgoorlie, which is in the goldfields here in Western Australia. For those who don't know where that is, well, put it this way. Kalgoorlie is about 370 miles east of Perth, or rather just under 600 kilometers from Perth. It is literally in the middle of nowhere. But the goldfields, you can kind of guess as per the name, it was all about mining gold. And Kalgoorlie was the epicenter of mining gold in Western Australia. Our protagonist, Adela Martin, arrives in 1903 into Kalgoorlie, and she is a seamstress and she decides to open up the first haberdashery in the goldfields. She quickly finds out that things are not quite as they seem, and the information that she was presented doesn't really come to pass. So she has to get creative. She pivots quickly and she meets a whole range of interesting characters and befriends a whole lot of them, including Edward, the tailor across the road, and also, let's face it, love interest. This is a historical romance and focuses also around female friendship in an area which is predominantly male. The gender ratio at that point in time in Kalgoorlie was 1 woman to every 2 to 3 men. And yes, the book has some spice in it because, well, Adela befriends prostitutes. In fact, a good portion of the women that were there at the time were prostitutes. And a lot of what I've written has been based on real life accounts. So let's move on to how I got the idea. Back in 2020, Terry and I were meant to go to WonderCon in LA, but this little thing called the pandemic hit and we weren't allowed to leave the state. Now, I won't go into too much detail, but Western Australia was a little bit different in the pandemic to the rest of the world. We are a massive state and we don't have a huge population. So our Premier at the time just cut off the 2 roads in and out of the state, closed our ports and closed our airport and was like, okay, we're done. Thanks so much. You can travel around the state if you like, but no one's really getting in or out. And that's how we existed for over a year. We didn't really have to wear masks. I think there was a mandate for about 2 weeks where we had to stay at home, and if we had to move about, we had to wear masks. But realistically, life continued as normal for us, or as close to normal as can be. And to be honest, it worked. For that year and a bit, Western Australia, we only had 9 people die of COVID. That's it. I think our fatality rate was one of the lowest in the world. Shout out to our previous Premier, Mark McGowan. Anyway, I digress. Terry and I had that trip all planned, but we couldn't go. But we still had the time off work, so we decided instead to pivot and go and see some of our wonderful state. Places that we hadn't been before. And first on that list was Kalgoorlie. So we got in our car and we drove 6 hours. You know what driving 6 hours east of Perth looks like? Desert. Or rather scrublands. It's red dirt and scrublands. It's actually pretty, but in a really strange way. When we arrived into Kalgoorlie, I instantly fell in love. The architecture is so unique. It's a mixture of Federation with Edwardian and Victorian influences from the UK, but also some amazing influences from Europe as well. There are these huge buildings that seem to pop up from the desert, and these buildings are between 100 and 120 years old. Whilst we were there, we did a walking history tour, which was literally just get a headset and walk around listening as things were playing into our ears. It was so interesting. There was even an American president who actually went to Kalgoorlie and was a geologist there for a bit of time before he went back to the US and entered politics. I'll let you Google to find out which one it was. What was so interesting to me was literally in 10 years, everything sprung up. Like the main heart of Kalgoorlie sprung up with these huge buildings. So gold was first discovered in Kalgoorlie by Paddy Hannon in 1893. By 1903, which is when my story is set, most of the main buildings were built, or at least half of them, but a lot of the hotels were already built. And you've got to remember, like, nothing was there. Like the timber, there wasn't much timber because once again, desert or near desert. And water was so scarce. The government of Western Australia had enough foresight to know that this was a big deal and they needed to get water to the goldfields. So they spent a ridiculous amount of money for the time period and a number of years and built a massive water pipeline from Mundaring Weir, which is just outside Perth, all the way to Kalgoorlie in the early 1900s. I think it even started in the late 1800s. This pipeline still exists, still works, and still brings water to Kalgoorlie over 100 years later. The other tour that Terry and I did while we were there was a brothel tour, and that was eye-opening. Seriously, if anyone ever gets the chance to go to Kalgoorlie, do the brothel tour. Just do the brothel tour. It is very good. So after we left, it was just this constant thinking about Kalgoorlie that was going on in my head. I still wanted to know more. So I started reading up about Kalgoorlie. I then ordered books about Kalgoorlie, especially ones that focused on the lives of women in Kalgoorlie and the surrounding goldfields areas. And then I started making a bit of a timeline, started making notes, putting interesting characters, you know, real people that I found, putting their story down in like little dot points, and then creating like a timeline of which buildings were built when and what shape the city was kind of being created. So over the next 4 years, I just kind of kept on layering on this kind of story, an idea of what Kalgoorlie looked like, and it came very clear to me that what I was looking at was around about 1903. The pipeline had just been completed. Kalgoorlie was about to explode in population, especially female population, because now there's suddenly water, it's more, you know, habitable for wives and children. And there's a lot of interesting things dynamically that is happening within Kalgoorlie in that time frame of like 1903 to about 1905. Yes, I am a bit of a nerd and a geek, and I just love getting my facts. I also have a very vivid imagination, so it kind of felt like I could visualize what it was like, what it looked like, what it smelt like, what the people wore, how they dressed, you know, how they did their hair. It felt real to me. One may say that I became obsessed, but very privately. I think for the longest time, I didn't even tell Terry. I was just doing this in my free time and just like, oh, I'm gonna read this book tonight, that sort of thing. Then came planning. So I'm sure it will be no surprise to anyone who watches my channel that I am 100% a planner. In novel writing, you are either a planner or a pantser. A pantser meaning you just write by the seat of your pants. I could not do that. That is absolutely not me. I have a linear brain. I need to know exactly where I'm going, and I need to write it down and break it down. And earlier this year, I really needed a break from cosplay. That's not to say that I'm not coming back to cosplay. Of course, this is a cosplay channel. I love cosplay, but just with everything that was happening, I was severely burnt out. I needed not to sit at my sewing machine for a couple of months. I'm old enough and wise enough to know exactly what the signs are, and rather than pulling the pin on cosplay altogether, I knew I just needed to take a step back. And don't worry, I've got cosplays in the pipeline. Just you wait, I'm collecting materials as we speak. So I figured now was the time. and I would finally write this story that had been formulating in my head for the last 4 years. And the point where it all started was when Terry and I were in Toronto. Out of all places, we were in Toronto and we went to Dollarama and we found a notebook. This is the notebook. It's pink. It says write and it's got rings on the side so it's easy to flip through. It has off-white paper and it's really nice to feel. If this was not a sign to me that I needed to buy this and start writing out my idea, because I'm a very tactile person, I need to physically feel something as I'm just blur everything down onto a page. I don't know if there would be a sign as strong as this ever come up. It was literally in front of my face and I was like, okay, looks like we're doing this. So on Thursday, the 18th of April, I started writing the plan of my novel. I wrote its story arc, I wrote its characters, and then I started plotting out each of the chapters. Complete with the little squares for tick boxes, so as I was writing, when I did that thing in the chapter, I could tick it off. Because bullet journaling, there are things that I like about it. And now I'll pass you to past me to tell you when I finished planning. It is currently Monday, May 13th, 2024, and I have just finished writing the outline for my story. So I guess the next thing I gotta do is write the damn thing. So I began writing my first draft on Friday the 17th of May. Apparently a lot of people get very scared to start writing, and I can totally understand why, because it's such an overwhelming prospect to write so many words down onto a page. But a piece of advice that I kind of hold on to in all aspects of my life is you can't wait to be perfect to start. You have to start in order to get to perfection. And trust me, I'm nowhere near perfection in this novel yet, but I'm on my way. And that kind of goes into the thought that you can edit a terrible page of writing, but you can't edit a blank page. So I just had to do the thing. And so I did the thing. Here is past me again. So I've just finished chapter 10 and I'm sitting on 26,000 words, or just over. That means I am a third of the way through my book. That's crazy. I started this a week ago and I'm a third of the way through. It's just been very easy to write, which has been so lovely, and I sincerely hope it continues to be like this. I'm sitting on the 26,000 odd words now. Times that by 3, it ends up 78,000 ish. So that's roughly where I'm aiming for. So it is currently the 26th of May, so about a week and a half since I actually began writing this, and I have just hit the halfway mark. So I have hit the end of chapter 15 out of 30. I am currently at 38,138 words, which if I double that, it's like a target of about 76,000 words. Once again, it's kind of still in that ballpark figure that I was kind of aiming for. It varies, but usually it's like 75,000 to somewhere between like 85,000. I'm like feeling pretty good that I'm in that kind of category. I'm looking at what's recommended in terms of historical romance, and they are saying, you know, between 50 and 90,000, and then other places are saying for historical romance aim between 70 and 75,000 words. I'm writing on A4 sheets paper and I'm up to 82 pages, which is crazy. I don't think I've ever written anything this long before, and the fact that it just feels like it's just flowing nicely. Like, I know that when I edit it, it's gonna be so awful, but it feels good to continue to get this out. So I've got to a really juicy bit, so I'm excited to write the next chapter. I normally only try and write the chapters like in one go, in like one sitting, so I don't have to like trek back, but I'm actually really considering just starting the next chapter because it's a really juicy scene. Okay, let's get the other 15 chapters done. I became obsessed with my story. I became obsessed with Kalgoorlie, obsessed with my characters, obsessed with the story. It was the best way that I could inspire myself to get the story out. This story that I had been internalizing for the last 4 years. So every single day I wrote 1 to 2 chapters without fail. Even the days when I had finished a full day of work, I came home and I was excited to write. And I finished my first draft on Monday, the 3rd of June. So yeah, a little over 2 weeks, I think. The final word count was 66,368 words. A fair bit shy of what I was aiming for. But I knew there was going to be edits, so I didn't feel too bad about that. It was also worth noting that 9 out of the 10 last chapters were all under 2,000 words, which is a very short chapter. It wasn't that those chapters were lacking, it was just there wasn't enough to actually pad out the entire chapters as I thought that there would be. But I had a plan. So then we began our first edit. So yes, as you have found out already, I like to hold things. I'm a tactile person. So what did I do? I made sure that I printed off my novel. And on Wednesday, the 5th of June after work, I went and picked it up from the printers. Look what I've got! It's my book! It's my book! Oh my gosh! So I'm so excited. I picked this up from the printer yesterday, just after work, and I also got a brand new red pen and some highlighters, and now I'm gonna start editing it. I can't believe it. I've got it in my hands. Here it is again. So on Friday the 7th of June, I started editing it. I grabbed my red pen and I literally went through it all. Every single sentence. I read it out, and most of it I read out loud to myself to kind of make sure that the flow was good. Took some time. It took some time. Now I'd done a little bit of research, aka TikTok, book talk, and everything that I heard was that there was going to be major plot holes, and the first edit is always horrible, and you wonder, how could I ever have written such horrible things, and why did I think that was good? Now, there were a lot of edits. I'm not gonna lie, like, this book is literally completely covered with red ink. But there weren't any major plot holes. And I honestly think that came down to the fact that I had thought about this story for so long, and I had planned it out so carefully in my planning stage. I really didn't deviate much from what I had planned. There were things that surprised me as I was writing, certain characters behaving in certain ways that I was like, oh, that's interesting, okay then. And like little add-on scenes, but they kind of just added to the story. They didn't take it in a completely new direction. So I didn't really find any major plot holes. Or it could be that I'm just very, very close to it and I just don't see the plot holes right now. We'll get to that a little bit later. But yeah, here's past me again. So it is currently the 10th of June and I have just finished going through and doing the physical edit on my manuscript, on the very first draft. So now the last thing I need to do for this stage is to get all of these changes and actually input them into the computer. So that's kind of like a second edit, but really it's just kind of copying this over. But no doubt I'll pick some other stuff up as I'm going along. I do know that most of it is only line edits. I have managed to get rid of some huge chunks of scenes and even complete scenes, and I know that there is one particular scene that I need to change to a different character's perspective. But other than that, it was a lot of fun to go back and read through it. So one last lot and then it will be done for now, but we'll get to that. So my second edit began on Tuesday the 11th of June, and it was not as simple as copy and paste. I was grievously mistaken. It was a full second edit as I was writing the second draft, because I was going through and I was rereading what I had put in red, and then made sure that it still made sense in the context of the rest of the story. And so I ended up reading and even rereading the story with the edits put in place. This part actually took longer than the initial first edit, but I'm so glad that I did it this way, because it allowed me to critique the editing choices that I had made. It allowed me to look at what I wanted to change in the red pen, and then to read the story between the two different versions and figure out which one should stay, or should I discard both of them and write something completely different, which I did a few times. And because I'm a data nerd, here is the breakdown. So this was the first draft, like put all the words on the page, just get it out, and there were 30 chapters, and I've gone ahead and I've reduced it down to 27 chapters, and I've combined these 6 chapters into these 3. And I got rid of some characters, and I got rid of some scenes that were making things slow. I finished this process on Sunday, the 16th of June. The final word count was 70,020 words. I just hit past the 70,000 word mark. I was so happy because like that was the minimum for me. As like I was writing the story, I was like, I need to hit 70,000 at the very least. Like I'm aiming for 75, but I will be okay with 70. So I just hit it. And that wasn't me just adding words randomly, like they were all intentional. So when I hit over the 70,000 just, and I looked at my word count, I thought, finally, that's really good. And to be honest, there's still going to be more edits, so it probably will go up by a few more thousand words, no doubt. So what's next? Well, as of recording this video, it is Monday the 17th of June. That means it is 1 month to the date that I started writing this novel. And it is around about 2 months to the date since I bought the notebook and started planning it all out. Now, I am no expert. Obviously, this is the first time I've written a novel, but that is incredibly fast. And one may even say a little bit too fast. Right now, this story has consumed so much of my waking and sleeping kind of thoughts. So I need to take a step away from it. I'm not saying it's necessarily bad, but I'm not saying it's necessarily good. I just know that I am too close to this and I need to step away, get a fresh head, clear out the story that has been plaguing me for 4 years, so that I can pick it up in a month or a couple of months even and read it with a fresh set of eyes. So when I'm ready, in a couple of months time, I will hit print, send it to the printer, and I will print out draft 2 of this story. After I edit that, if I feel that it's good enough, I will send it out to some beta testers. And if that happens, well, that will be part 2, so watch this space. But no matter what, I've done something that I've wanted to do since I was a child. I've written a novel. Even if it is never published, I did it. And it feels amazing. Like genuinely, it feels amazing. So for now, I am going to put Haberdashery in Gold to one side, and I'm probably gonna start working on a cosplay. Watch this space. Maybe I'll be Curly Cosplay. Cosplayer, YouTuber, and novelist. Who knows? In the comments, please tell me if you enjoy writing as well, or if you enjoy reading, or if you enjoy both. I would love to know. And if you are a writer, let me know what you write. And if you enjoy reading, let me know what you enjoy reading. Who your favorite authors are. All that good stuff, right? Okay, thank you so much for watching. I hope that you've enjoyed this video. I'll see you all in the next one. Bye!